Hello students, this is the remaining part of difference between phrases and clauses. So phrases I have already made and now I am going to discuss clauses. As I told you that phrases, clauses and sentences are the group of words. But the difference between phrase, clause and sentence is phrase is a group of words which does not have subject verb combination. This is very important point, right? Phrase does not have subject verb combination, whereas clause must have a combination of subject and verb. So this is the basic difference between phrase and clause. And the difference between clause and sentence: clause is a group of words which must have subject and verb, but sometimes clause does not make complete sense, whereas sentence is a group of words which must make complete sense. This is the difference. So let us see what is clause. A clause is a group of words that contains a subject and predicate. As I told you, what's a clause? Clause is a group of words that contains subject and a predicate, means subject and verb, which is very important uh, condition of clause, right? The predicate is the part of the clause that contains the verb. Predicate means what? Predicate means verb tells you something about the subject. So subject and verb, this combination is the very important, that's a necessary condition of clause. Okay, now what are the characteristics of clause? Contains a subject and a verb, right? Clause means subject and verb. This is the defining characteristics, very important. Clause means subject and verb, at least a subject and a verb. Can be independent or dependent. Sometime it can be independent and sometime dependent. This is what determines if it can stand alone as a sentence. If it is independent, then it can stand alone as a sentence, otherwise it cannot. This is the difference between clause and sentence. Sentence always can stand alone, whereas clause may or may not. Now, what are the types of clauses? So, types of clauses: independent clause or main clause. Very important topic. This is because when we discuss uh, noun phrases and IC analysis and other parts of linguistics. So basic part of linguistics is phrases and clauses, because if you are very much clear with phrase and clause, then definitely you will be able to tell about sentence, right? And then clarity must be there that yeah, this is phrase, this is clause, this is sentence, then types of sentences, right? Then only you can be able to analyze uh, immediate constituents in a uh, linguistics, right? In the linguistics. So now types of clauses, if we talk about, so first is independent clause or main clause. So what is independent clause or main clause? Independent clause contains a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. Which expresses the complete thought is called independent clause. It can stand alone as a simple sentence. Example, the sun is shining. Here we check that a subject and a verb, right? So sun, subject, and verb is shining. Now another example, she likes to read. Here subject she and likes to read, verb. They ran to the store, they and ran. Now dependent clause. Dependent clause. Definition, dependent clause contains a subject and a verb, right? So that contains a subject and a verb, but does not express a complete thought. It begins with subordinating conjunction. Important. It begins with subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunction means which is not fully dependent, which gives reason sometime or sometime condition, right? Which gives begins with because, although, since, when, if. These are the conditions, these are the reasons, right? So dependent clause start with these words. This is the clue. And these words are known as subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. Otherwise, relative pronoun means all who, whose, whom, which, what, where. These are called relative pronoun when these words, question words, comes in between. When these question words, who, whose, whom, which, what, was, WH words come in between the sentences are called relative pronoun. It needs to be attached to an independent clause to make sense. And why these relative pronoun or subordinating conjunctions are used? Because it needs to be attached to an independent clause to make sense. So this dependent clause attached with independent clause through subordinating conjunction or through these words, relative pronoun or because, although, these words. So this way you can understand that's a dependent clause and independent clause, or independent clause or dependent clause. But here joining word is subordinating conjunction. Here how dependent clause and independent clause is joined? Through subordinating conjunction, right? This is called dependent clause. When dependent clause is dependent on independent clause and is joined with subordinating conjunction. Okay. Now example, because she's tired. So this is dependent clause. Because she's tired, so what happened? She went to bed early. She went to bed early. This is independent clause, right? The clause because she was tired is dependent and cannot stand alone. And that is why this clause is called dependent clause. Because she was tired. This is dependent clause, right? Another example. The man who lives next door is a doctor. The man who lives next door. The clause who lives next door is dependent because who lives next door, right? So the man who lives next door is dependent and modifies man, right? So that this group of words is used for the man. And if you check this group of words, you will find the subject and verb. The man who, this is subject, and lives, this is verb. So that is why this is clause, but not the man who lives next door. Not making complete sense, does not make complete sense, and that is why this is called dependent clause. Next example, I'll go to the party if I finish my work. If I finish my work, if I finish my work, that is dependent clause. Dependent clause, right? Why? Because this, in this sentence, let us check that the man, I will go to party. Suppose this sentence is not, this words are not there, but then I will go to the party is clear, that is independent clause. But here we see that in this case, that is if I finish my work. That is not clear. However, I is subject, right? If you see that, sir, I is subject, finish is verb, but sentence is not complete, and that is why this is called dependent clause. Now, difference between phrase and clause. So difference is that, sir, we can compare, and again this is very important part of grammar, so listen carefully. Is as far as structure is concerned, so structure of phrase and clause, here is structure lacks of subject verb combination, no subject verb combination in phrase, and contains a subject verb combination, this is the clause. Then if we talk about completeness, so that is no subject verb combination, that is why completeness does not express a complete thought, and it can or cannot, can express a complete thought or an incomplete thought, not sure for clause. And then can stand alone? No. Phrase cannot stand alone? Yes. Independent clause can stand alone. Of course, dependent cannot. Now, if we talk about function, acts as a single part of speech. Function, noun, adjective, adverb. So, this is acts as a single part of speech, function of phrase. So, this is just one part of speech, and functions as a sentence, right? As a sentence or a part of, or a part of sentence, sentence or part of sentence. Okay, so it can be complete sentence clause if it is independent clause, or dependent clause is the part of sentence. Now example, in the garden, right? Or they walked, this is in the garden, no subject verb, and they walked, here subject, what's the subject? They is subject and walked is verb, and that is why this is clause, because making in this is dependent independent clause, so making complete sense, they walked, right? And then example is, another example is running quickly, but not who is running, we don't know. Here he runs quickly, he and runs, he is the subject and runs is verb. Clear? Now putting it all together in a sentence, let's look a sentence that contains both phrases and clauses, right? So let us see. Because, as because will this word comes, and then immediately your mind should be should think for clause. Because he was running late, the man with the red hat quickly ran down the street because he was running late. This is dependent clause, right? Because he is running late is dependent clause. It has a subject. Because why? Because it has a subject, he, and was running, that is verb. So this is subject and this is verb. Okay. And then it has a subject, he, and a verb, was running. But it starts with subordinating conjunction, that is because. Because it cannot stand alone. Because reason because. So that is because he was running late. So what happened? Question is, it is not clear, and that is why this is dependent clause. Now next is, that is the man with the red hat. This is the noun phrase. Why? Because it acts as a subject of the independent clause within this phrase. With the red hat is prepositional phrase modifying man. So this is noun phrase, the man. The man. Actually, adverb is the man. Now with the red hat, that is, it acts the subject of the independent clause. So that is, now sentence is started, and this is whole group of word is a noun phrase. Noun phrase. Why? Because the subject of the independent clause within this phrase with the red hat is prepositional phrase modifying man, right? However, this is noun phrase, but this is complete noun phrase, but within noun phrase, this part is called prepositional phrase, because this prepositional phrase is modifying the man or describing the man. How man, like with the red hat, we are talking about the man who is with the red hat, and that is why this is called prepositional phrase. Noun phrase, in this group of word, noun phrase is there. As a whole complete group of word is noun phrase, and then within noun phrase, this is called prepositional phrase because it start with preposition with. Okay. Now quickly ran down the street. Quickly ran down the street, activity is going on, as you imagine, right? So this is the verb phrase. Verb phrase because ran, है ना, combined with an adverbial phrase. And what is adverbial phrase? Ran is qualified by quickly. Ran is main verb, and quickly and down the street modifies the verb. So then quickly is adverb, ran is verb, right? And down the street is the group of words, right? Down the street modifies the verb. So then the verb phrase, this is verb phrase. Why? Because verb is, work is going on, action is going on, and that is why this is verb phrase. Quickly ran down the street, right? So here the entire sentence is complex sentence because it contains at least one independent clause and one dependent clause. The independent clause is the man with the red hat quickly ran down the street. Now see complete sentence. This is the man with the red hat. So let us see the man, right, with the red hat, with the red hat quickly ran down the street, right? So here we can see that that's the man with the red hat. This is noun phrase. but within this noun phrase there are, this is prepositional phrase, right? With the red hat, sorry, the red hat, है ना? then quickly then quickly is adverb, ran down, so that is verb phrase, and down the street is just modifiers. So this is the analysis of the sentence. Okay, so I think you must have got little idea. Thank you so much. Bye.